meeting. So we can start. I think we have quite a few people. Okay, hello everyone, and so thanks for your contribution and to SNT 2000. And my colleague Israki will be coordinator, will be moderator of Q&A, and my colleague Ms. Lucy, and who is Associate Service Officer from Capacity section, and will host the event. And Ms. Cross will provide IT service. For today's e-poster, and due to time limitation, so each person has only 2 minutes to promote their work. If next week you can share a few sliders and from your side. And if we have enough time in the end of this session, maybe we have an opportunity to ask questions. As you know, we have 2 different topics in our section, in our session, and I will be convener, and for T1.2, and Ms. Raki will be Q&A moderator. And once e-poster in 1.2 finished, and Ms. Raki will take over 5.3, I will be moderator of the Q&A. If you want to find further information and in e-poster, please feel free to visit the e-poster and include video in the dedicated e-poster sessions and engage their discussion with authors or leave your comments. Thank you for your understanding. So the first speaker, the name is Adbar Ocho, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to share my screen. Yeah, can you see my screen?
See, please.
Yeah, so currently Africa, the continent of Africa lacks high-resolution seismic model that connects the entire continent both laterally and at depth, both in the crust and the uppermost mantle. And the reason is not far-fetched. If you take a plot of the distribution of global seismic stations and events, you would see the obvious paucity and sparsity of seismic station and interplace seismicity in the continent of Africa. And what this inhibits us from doing is being able to image at high resolution all of these very important geological features in Africa that could advance our understanding of the Earth system. Well, we've combined all of these earthquake and ambient noise data set and using stations in Europe and in Arabia and nearby continent. And we've built a new 3D seismic velocity model that we think could serve as a reference model for the African region. And this I don't have time here to talk about the features of this model, but if you're interested, you could check out our preprint that we posted online already, and check out our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Diane Schunker, please. Are you online, Diane Schunker? So,
yes.
Okay, please. Yeah, please.
Let me share the Wi-Fi. Yes, yes. There is a
I'm sorry, Diane Schunker, because of the time, maybe you can move to next one. So once you finish your preparation, we can call you next one. And the next one, I'd like to invite Ethan Corbani, so please.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Can I share my screen while the previous one is still shared, or?
Yes, sure, please.
Okay. Can you see my screen? Hello, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see, please.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Yeah, this work is showing a result of ambient noise tomography to image the crustal structure at the KTB drilling site in Germany. So in this work, basically, we use seismic ambient noise. Sorry for the interruption. So basically what you see on the figure 1, we use the continuous waveform at stations. So once we compute cross correlation of the between an station pair, it's somehow equivalent to a seismic phase. Here in our case, it's surface wave emerging from one station as source and received to another one as receiver. So we can assess the velocity of the seismic wave of the medium between the two stations. For the data, we use a number of temporary and permanent stations. You can see on figure number 2. And the study area, which is in the southwestern Germany. The KTB drilling site, if you see on the photo on the top right, it was a drilling project where the crustal rocks were drilled down to 9 kilometers depth. So we used the recording of the stations shown in figure 2 and computed the cross correlation functions between each station pairs. You see an example on the figure number 3. Here in this case, the correlation function is dominated by Rayleigh wave. We can extract the dispersion curve of the Rayleigh wave. Once we have the dispersion
Excuse me,
curve.
Ethan. So
Yeah.
I just try to remind you time is almost done. Can you quickly finish your e-poster?
Yes, and we perform inversion to group velocity map and then a depth inversion to extract a shear velocity for the model. So if you're interested in more details, please visit my slides and video recorded, uploaded. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. And the next speaker is Diane Schunker, and hopefully you can share your slide from your side.
I want to share my slide. Yes. 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 Diane Schunker from Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, India. My topic of presentation is seismic hazard estimate in the state of Uttarakhand, Himalaya, in terms of ground acceleration. Uttarakhand is situated in the middle of the Himalaya. I have divided this area into 4 zones, and seismic hazard estimate in terms of P ground acceleration have been estimated. So the P ground acceleration in terms of input parameter, that is return period, maximum magnitude, A and B value were calculated, and these input were put into the crisis software, and the peak ground acceleration in different return period of 225, 475, and 2475 year has been calculated, and the peak ground hazard map were prepared for the region. So all the 16 districts, we have calculated the pre-ground acceleration, and the uniform hazard spectra have been estimated and reported. And
so sorry, Diane Schunker, and the time is almost finished, and so thank you for your speaking. And so we have
I invite you.
Yeah, thank you, Diane Schunker. So next speaker is Gonzalo Antonio Fernandez, please. So are you online? And next speaker, Gonzalo Antonio Fernandez. Okay. If not, so we have moved to next speaker. And next speaker is Lalisha Kristipova.
Hello, my name is Larisa Tsidipova. I want to present my research. Monitoring the current state of the seismicity seismically active areas and providing information about earthquakes is quite a popular task. The use of quantitative data for qualitative assessment.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Okay.
It's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
The use quantitative data for a qualitative assessment of the level of seismic activity in the region allow us to get intuitive information about seismicity by creating formalized scale of seismicity. And the concept of the seismic background for a particular region is formed and defined. The average distribution function of the total energy released during 3 months on the territory of the central Baikal, southeast of Russia, was calculated. The level of seismicity was determined by the scale was proposed in the work by Saltykov in 2011. And the total seismic energy released during 3 months lies in the range from 10 to 14 LGE. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking. And next speak is Lucia Foitikova. Are you online, Lucia?
Yes, I'm online. I'm trying to share my screen. Okay, can you
Yes,
see my
please.
screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. Hi, my name is Lucia Fotikova, and I'm going to present our result.
So, excuse me, can you full screen and your slider?
Can you see? You can. Okay, just. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Just go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Okay, and I'm going to present our result of calculation of moment tensor and focal mechanism. We try to calculate moment tensor for weak event from area we have not any information so far. And there was a little earthquake with magnitude 3.2 on the border Slovakia and Ukraine. And we used full 3 component full waveform inversion completed by first motion polarities. First, location of the event gave us depth quite deep, 20 kilometers. It's quite deep for the region, but we used only regional station. Fortunately, there is a temporary project, PACASE, and later we can have more data. For calculation, we used several velocity models. One of them was derived from Celebration project. But finally, it looked like not the best velocity model for focal mechanism for the region, at least for further stations. Here is a slide where I want to show some preliminary result and of focal mechanism, and we used signs. As you see, we had quite a lot of stations, but the focal sphere coverage it's not so perfect, and we couldn't get really nice result. Put it in this way. Then we focus on waveform inversion, and for this we used Isola code made by Zahradník and Sokos. Here you can see results for different velocity models. This is Vihorlad model we try to calculate deviatoric model, and you can see on this slide results and fit of waveforms. And for first 3 nearest stations, the result is quite good, but for further stations, it's very poor fit with distance station, put it in this way. But what is important, the inversion tend to hypocenter to very shallow depth, less than 2 kilometers. And there is another example. We used DC constraint mechanism to see fit of the waveforms, and you see the result. It's good for three nearest stations, but not fit to distance stations. And then we use a completely different velocity model, use DC constraint mechanism for all stations, and finally we very good result.
Excuse me, Lucia, because time is over. So can you quickly finish your?
Okay, and the most important thing is that all inversions send to the hypocentrum to the shallow depth, and finally we for first time obtain some mechanisms, and we obtain reverse fault mechanisms. That's all. Thank you.
And the next speaker is Michael Pegno, please.
Okay, let me share. Did it share? It didn't share. Oh.
So I just remind all participants, have questions, you can write your comments or leave your questions and online. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to play my recording. Thank you.
Michael, please, we can see your slider. Yeah.
Is it not playing the sound?
Yeah, we can hear you, please.
Okay, go ahead. I know it's low.
Michael, can you introduce briefly your slider?
Is the sound playing?
No, you can speak yourself.
Okay. Sorry, because I was trying to play the pre-recorded like they instructed. So So this is the RSTT model's been updated. We have tomography that includes all 4 regional phases. The results have a significant reduction in the median mislocation values over the tested models. And one of the brand new things is the path-dependent travel time uncertainty in the model, where we use a random effects model. And the validation results here indicate that this results in 90% coverage ellipse sizes that more closely reach the target error ellipse percentage. And in the poster, we are describing the full model and the calculation of the uncertainty using the phases. But in the poster, only the PN and PG phases are shown. But there are links here that you can pull down the papers for the tomography and the path-dependent uncertainty. Quick view of the tomography results for the upper mantle velocity for PN and the upper mantle gradient, along with the PG velocity results there. And then goes into the development of the random effects model to determine the model error, the bias, and the random error associated with the tomography. And you can use the nodal path weights to calculate the travel time uncertainty for any specific path in the model. On the right, there are examples of the different components that add up to the total uncertainty and comparing with the original SSSCs, which are the source-specific station corrections. And then doing validation results, we look at both mislocation results as well as the percentage of the time the coverage ellipse contains the ground truth location. And then the RSTT model with the path-dependent uncertainty does a very good job in reaching that 90% metric. So thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Baikal. It's very interesting and work. Thank you so much. And the next speaker is P. Mama.
Chairman, I'm going to share the slides. So I hope everyone can see the screen.
Yes, we can see. Go ahead.
So hi everyone, it's me, Pyo. So some of you may know Myanmar is one of the seismic active countries based on the situated between the 2 major plates, like Indian and the Eurasian plate collision zone. So like every 10 or 15 years, there's a one big event in Myanmar. So we, US from Singapore, have installed a 30 broadband seismic network in last 5 years ago by the collaboration with the local seismic monitoring agency. So this is an ongoing project, and they are still using this seismic station for their earthquake monitoring and the tsunami warning purpose. So as for the research purpose, like after we have a station, of course, like we do the site classification in order to understand the local side effect, like rock side or soft side, like depending on we follow the US NEHRB standard. So we compare our site class with the global tomography research. So the results are quite consistent. And of course, like we have detected many local earthquakes which are smaller magnitude. Those even you cannot see it in the global or international monitoring agency. So we carefully select the good event with the good arrival to do the earthquake relocation. So after relocation, you can see in the figure, like even the smaller event magnitude can see the house, the sled pooling. I mean, the Indian sled pooling in the Myanmar region. Of course, like we can also use the teleseismic event to see the moho dead beneath our seismic station. So we use the P-receiver function technique, and of course P2S the converter phase. We compare our model, our result with the Crest 1.0. So you can see in this superimposed figure. So our first publication have published in 2018. So I really welcome you guys to read the publication. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Pimomo. And the next speaker is Patrick Lafigi and Chintadali, please. I'm online, Patrick. Okay, if not, we will go to next speaker, and whose name is Omar. I forgot Kadri. Are you online, Omar? No. Okay, good. I think we just finished the first e-post presentation for T1.2. Now I will give the floor to my colleague Misraki, and who will take over T5.3. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. If you have questions, you can go to the video e-post conference room. Thank you.
Right, so welcome to the CTBT Team 5 goal, which is the CTBT in a global context, SNT 2021. In this team, we explore the capacity building, education, communication, and public awareness. Today, we have 12 e-poster presentation. As you know, each presenter will have 2 minutes to promote and create interest in their posters by presenting only highlights. Since we have only 2 minutes, I kindly ask one to be ready and to be brief so that we have time for everyone to present. As you know, after all e-presenters, then we'll have the opportunity to ask questions. So I'll kindly ask everyone to be ready and brief. The first presentation will be by Christopher Alan Cruz, Colorado. You have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Sure, things, but I'll just speak anyway. Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Cruz, and I will be talking about outreach and education through museums and cultural centers. For the presentation, there are 2 specific case studies, one focused in a Los Angeles museum and the other at the Natural History Museum in Vienna. And the idea is to use museums, educational and cultural centers to promote the work of the CTBT, the CTBTO, and the CTBTO youth group, because the work in and of itself is multifaceted, intersectional, and of high appeal to general audiences. But there just needs to be the proper channel to correctly promote it. And I believe that museums are that way. Thank you for the privilege of your time and attention, and happy Bowtie Tuesday.
Thanks very much, Christophe. That was brief and on time. The next is a group of presenters on poster 157, Anna Berezina, Ina Sokolova, Johannes Schweitzer, Natalia Milkova. Please go ahead and present your poster. Thank you. Anybody online from the group? So we go to the next presenter, who is Jairo Villa Olos. Please, the floor is yours while waiting for the next people to get ready. Thank you. Jairo, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I show you here a poster about some improvement in our NDC in Costa Rica in the last year. I want to show here about all tools we can use in our NDCs. Is very important to improve our network, local network for Seismic. In the last year, we improved our earthquake early warning and improved our data analysis with all tools in NDC in the box is supported by CTBTO. And I want to show you here a little taste about analysis of Beirut and explosion in Stromboli. We can use all tools we have for the state parties to use and to research with data from international monitoring system. And other important point is to have all software and tools updated in our NDCs for use and to give advantage our user to research. Thank you too much.
Thank you so much. The next presenter is Deepak Shah. The floor is yours. Deepak?
Can you see my screen?
Yes. It's coming.
So hello CTBT, this is Deepak Rasa, CYZ member since 2017. and currently living in Kathmandu, Nepal. This is my first e-poster and it's an honor to be a part of SNT 2021. My e-poster is titled as Nepal in the Arena of CTBT, and it aims at highlighting the current position Nepal holds in the global arena of the CTBT. Nepal, being a staunch supporter of the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, signed the NPT in 1970, and just after the CTBT establishment, became a signatory as well. But still, the ratification from Nepal is long overdue, like many other countries. Recently, in 2020, Nepal government launched a Radioactive Material Uses and Regulation Act, which opened an entirely new possibility concerning the peaceful use of nuclear applications for the benefit of the country. The CTBTO has long proposed the installation of an auxiliary seismic station at the Everest Base Camp, which is still under planning phase. Nepal could very well benefit from the IMS facilities, and not to mention it will help for the CTBTO's agenda in the long run as well. The Nepalese youths are fervent towards nuclear disarmament, and youths from every corner of the globe should join hands and contribute, leading to the ultimate entry into force. Thank you.
Thank you. The next presenter, Ms. Madeleine Wangui Wanyaga. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen. So I'm doing a presentation on the seismic hydraulic diffusivity for geothermal exploration. So this seismic hydraulic diffusivity in Kenya has mainly been done on induced seismicity. And I was doing a research to see how we can use it to explore the geothermal capacity that we have in Kenya. So I did a study at Baikal Geothermal Prospect. What we need to do is first of all locate the events, and then after, so they are local events, and then after location of the events, we can be able to estimate the seismic hydraulic diffusivity by using the distance and the time from a single source that initiated the seismic swarms. And then from that, what I got was at the Baikal Geothermal Prospect, the green areas here have high seismic hydraulic diffusivity, meaning that there can be drilling of the high productivity wells, and it will ease in the exploration of geothermal capacity in Kenya. Thank you.
The next presentation is by Anastasia Kulikova. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone, and now my colleague will demonstrate our poster. I hope you all can see it properly. So, virtual greetings to all the participants of the Science and Technology Conference 2021 from Moscow. Our names are Anastasia and Varvara, and it is a great honor for us to introduce our e-poster about Science Diplomacy Club.
Can you use full screen, Anastasia? Thank you.
My colleague is suddenly muted.
Then please go ahead.
Okay, so MEFI Science Diplomacy Club is a unique platform that aims at opening new opportunities for youth in the field of scientific and technological cooperation. A central tenet of SDC activities is nurturing a new generation of experts in the field of science diplomacy, non-proliferation and disarmament, as well as nuclear test ban. Also, we are proud to announce that our club includes participants who are interested in issues at the intersection of science and diplomacy, who are willing to bridge diplomatic challenges and technical solutions, who are curious about cross-cutting issues and topics at the interface of science, innovation, and international relations, as well as who are ready to harness the power of atom for peaceful purposes. And please pay attention on the right side of our slide, where you can see inspiring statistics concerning club's activities. It is a result of huge work that has been done during more than 2 years. Moreover, Science Diplomacy Club has 3 main pillars that are aimed at expanding our capacity. That deals with building bridges with young generation, as well as building gender equality and building connection with foreign students. At the end of our presentation, we would like to thank you for your kind attention and mention that we will be happy to answer all of the questions either through S&T platform or through our emails. Also, we are happy to invite you to join our club on social networks. Thank you for your attention.
The next presentation is by Ina Sokolova. Ina, the floor is yours. Thank you. Ina, are you ready? I see that you are here. Okay, I will come back to you. We'll come back to you if you. Let's give the floor to Lucas Barros. Lucas, are you ready? Lucas, you are muted.
Yes. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My talk is about a book showing the importance of NDC in Brazil for its better participation in the verification regime of the CTBT. This book was written in Portuguese, but we intend to translate to English and to the English. The objective of the book is to contribute to the discussion in Brazil about the creation of a national data center, because in Brazil don't have yet a national data center. The book has the following constitution, was divided in 10 chapters. Chapter 1, historical background of CTBT, 2, CTBT verification regime, international data center, on-site inspection, Chapter 5, Brazilian participation in IMS, Chapter 6, institutions that operate IMS stations in Brazil, and 7, national data center establishment and operation, 8, nuclear and chemical explosive data analysis, discuss and conclude, reference and glossary. Thank you.
Lucas, thanks very much. We'll all look forward to have a copy of your book. The next presentation is by Soma Basak. The floor is yours. Soma Basak, if you are ready, we will come back to check to you again. Let's see if our colleague Ina Sokolova is ready. Ina Sokolova. Right, okay, so the next presentation will be by Valeria Porochenko.
My report will be presented by my co-author, Johanna Schweitzer.
Right, so go ahead, please, Johanna Schweitzer.
I have to unmute, sorry. We have, and I have to share. Is this, I guess. Can you see my? Can you see the screen? Hello?
Can you please go to slideshow? Yes, we see clearly your screen.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, this is our report is about the joint seismic monitoring activities in Central Asia, and we have the main tasks are the technical support of the Kyrgyz and the Kazakh networks and national data centers within this project, and the compilation of a regional bulletin for Central Asia, and to support a training center in Kazakhstan, which helps to educate the members of national data centers in Central Asia. And also we have done some joint scientific research. And just to give you a quick view here, this is the network of the seismic stations in the Kazakhstan area, and Kyrgyzstan, and the corresponding seismicity. Then we have worked quite a lot in conserving and digitizing old analog seismograms in Kyrgyzstan, and to keep them for the future. And then the Kazakh NDC had been updated, and there had been some upgrade of software and of hardware. And here, these are pictures from the training center in Kazakhstan, where colleagues and from other NDCs in Central Asia are educated, and then common research is concentrating on the building up a new bulletin for Central Asia based on the observations of several of the countries in Central Asia, and increase and improve with this the cooperation between different NDCs in Central Asia. And one of the aspects is to calibrate the magnitude scales in the area so that everybody speaks about the same numbers, and to look for dangerous areas. Central Asia is known for big earthquakes and for aftershock sequences and their behavior and their statistical behavior with respect to size and to magnitude behavior. And then some work is concentrating on other events like landslides, for example, here in Kyrgyzstan, or the monitoring of glacier events in the Himalaya, which are recorded with the seismic stations in Central Asia. And with this, I would like to stop here. And you see here the conclusions for the whole work we are doing together in Central Asia.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. It is an interesting work. I mean, several interesting posters are being presented. I kindly remind all online viewers as well as participants, please kindly put your questions using the super event to our presenters so that the discussion can continue. Thanks very much. With this, I will ask the next presenter, who is, I already called the name, but you are ready now, Soma Basak, or a co-author of this poster. The floor is yours. Doesn't seem to be the case. So, Brando Mary. Valeria Korochenko. Then I will give the floor to Didier Bramongo Namogo. The floor is yours.
Sorry for disable. Sorry.
Go ahead, please. The floor is yours, Didier.
I'm sorry, please, for disabled.
Do you have a slide, Didier, to share with us? Or to present without a slide? The floor is yours, Didier. Right, so while you're getting ready, I will give the floor to the next presenter, Anna Berezina. The floor is yours. Hi, Anna, you're muted. If you can please unmute yourself and take the floor. Thank you.
I'm sorry, my internet connection is very bad now. I'm sorry.
You understand, Anna?
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Let's try now.
How many do you have?
Two more.
Two more.
So while waiting Anna to get ready, I call Brandovi Neri. No, doesn't seem to be the case. Or anyone who is ready to share the slide, the floor is yours. You first announce that you're ready to share. Valeria, thank you. So the floor is yours.
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Valeria. I'm from IFI University. I used to be a communications coordinator with the CTBTO youth group for 2 years. And I'm really impressed by the progress that our group has made for 5 years. Can you imagine that in 2016, we had around 6 members. And as of today, we have around 1,000 members. I think that this progress would not have been possible without an effective and proper communication within the group and with the CTBTO staff. And I would love to share you the model that we have. First of all, we have the coordination team that serves as a contact point between the group and with the CTBTO staff, so-called task force. And I'm really happy to see some representatives of the group today. Secondly, we have social media accounts. We have the CYG portal that provides members with the latest news and updates. We circulate the newsletter that also provides the latest info. And youth group members really know how to be active thanks to all these tools. And finally, we have the SDS and SNT that serve as a really global platform where members can see each other, they can meet each other and come up with great initiatives and ideas on how to promote the CTBT, its verification regime, and how to spread the word about the CYG group. I think that this model could be used by other youth movements that advocate for peace and security. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks very much. I would like to remind all, including those virtual audiences, to put your question using Super Event. We are approaching the end, so I will kindly ask if there is anyone in the room who would like to share or promote your poster. The floor is yours.
Can I go?
Please go ahead.
Sure, just a second. Here. Okay, you see the screen? Great. Sorry, I for some reason cannot do the full slide. Oh no, I took it. So my name is Ksenia Pronowska, and I'm education coordinator of the CTBTO youth group, and also master student career advanced Institute of Science and Technology. And this poster is done together with my co-author Evgenia Afanasyev, who is absent here, so I'm promoting for 2 of us. So the project is in relation to the research project for the CTBTO Youth Group, which is called CTBTO Youth Academy of Sciences. The main idea is to boost the amount of research done on the CTBT and CTBTO related topics, because, you know, I just Googled in Google Scholar that if you compare the scholarship on IA and CTBT, the difference is very huge, so it needs to be fixed. So it's a research and education project for existing or future CYG members to extend the scholarship and to place the CTBT on the scientific agenda on relevant platforms. Also, the idea is that the group of 4 to 5 people work for 2 or 3 months and make research by young professionals, and then this research can be published in some formidable media and academic platforms to revitalize the discussion. So the topic may be related to anything related to CTBT, CTBTO, including verification regime or scientific and civil applications. So whatever interests young generation. Hopefully to make this project live quite soon. So fingers crossed for that. Thank you for your attention. If you need more details, you can ask me questions, and you know, see the more detailed video on the platform. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ksenia. This was now this is bringing us to the conclusion of the session. Anyone who would like to take the floor, you have 2 minutes. Otherwise,
yes, I would like to
yes.
Present the open day for the public, which we had at the German IMS station TS19 IS26 in August 2019. Big construction works were finished, and so we invited the public and tourists to the station to show the facilities, but also the CTBT and some other research areas which are covered by VGR. And the presentation shows some nice pictures of this great day. We had more than 600 visitors. And in autumn, then in October, we also invited Vienna-based diplomats and PTS staff having a tour to the station, which I think also enjoyed the day. So go to the poster and have a look for the pictures. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ole. With this, we conclude the e-poster presentations. I would kindly ask everyone to go to the video room, meet the audience, and you continue the discussion and also download the posters. Thank you very much for your contribution. There were several online viewers, and this has been a very good session. I would ask now my colleague Haijun to join me for a minute to conclude the session. Thanks very much.
Thank you all, and thank you for participating in today's session, e-poster presentation. And I wish you can find more information from this conference. Thank you again.
Thank you for your presentation.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I can also the screen. 2 of them, yeah. And here, last Savannah is here, David Bowers is here. So they're already attending silently. Ron Song needs to wake up first. My question, how can I come back? Email. Previously, I don't know how to go back and do that. I just want to So if he joins not in the next minute or so, should I not interfere with the talk?
Ina, can you speak? Ina, can you speak?
Yes, yes, I can.
And can you put your camera? Maybe we can see you. Okay, that's good. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome. This is the first talk in the series of talks on the 25th year in the anniversary of the CTBT, and it's on seismic technology. Topic of this talk is new applications at the IDC for SHI expert technical analysis. The speaker is Ivan Kitov, a staff member of the CTBTO, and the co-authors are Ronan Lebar, Mikhail Roskov, and Yuri Starovoid. So I give the floor to you, Ivan. Please start.
Oh, thank you. I share the screen with a presentation now. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, share and Control L. Okay.
Yes, we can see your slides. Very good. So please go ahead.
But not the full screen. That's
Yeah, it would be better if you have presentation mode on.
I'm trying, but it gives me it.
Put L, Control L for
I
PDF files.
I press it. Okay, now it works.
Got it.
Okay, thank you for introduction. And I will skip the first slide when I just want to mention that the total service of co-authors for the PTS is above 60 years, which is a good thing, of course. Slide 2 is, first of all, we have to define the main challenges for the CTBT monitoring regime and tasks related to the IDC work. The objectives of the expert technical analysis stem from these challenges and tasks. The PTS routinely processes data from seismic, hydroacoustic, and infrasound SHI stations. The data are transmitted to the IDC and processed to detect, build, locate, and screen events that may be nuclear explosions. The observation and processing have to be sensitive to small events, especially in unusual locations. IMS array stations provide data with the highest resolution and have some potential for further improvement. Advanced processing methods can improve detection of monitoring relevant signals, effectively associate with detections with reliable event hypotheses, and locate these events accurately and with lower uncertainty. This slide gives some treaty definitions relevant to the expert technical analysis. The key words are highlighted bold and bold red. First, the IDC shall carry out special studies to provide in-depth technical review by expert analysis of data from the IMS. Second, for example, assisting individual states parties with expert technical analysis of IMS data and other relevant data in order to identify the source of specific events. Third, crucial parameters estimated by the IDC are origin, epicenter coordinates, and depth. Fourth, for IDC standard event screening, following criteria shall be used, among others: spectral ratios of phases, focal mechanism, relative excitation of seismic phases, comparative measures to other events and groups of events. We limit this presentation to seismic applications where we have some experience and results showing potential improvements related to the objectives mentioned above. These objectives are finding small events, events in unusual locations, high absolute and relative accuracy, and low uncertainty of location and depth estimation, estimation of standard and advanced event characteristics, estimation of focal mechanisms for the monitoring related events with magnitude, say, above 4, spectral ratios of phases, comparative measures to other events and group of events. Here we present 7 applications with relevant ETA tasks in the brackets, so you can check what application serves for what purpose. All these applications have to improve the completeness, accuracy, and consistency of the IDC products. Bulletins like updated event bulletin and expert technical analysis reports. This is a description of a first application, spot check tool, which is based on waveform cross-correlation. The basic idea behind this tool is to use information from the historical RAB events, from the historical nuclear test data, and apply new detection, phase association, and other algorithms and applications. There are 2 modes, automatic and interactive. The routine automatic processing includes proactive creation of the cross-correlation standard event list like cell 3 and comprehensive check of the events in cell 3 and RAB against the historical RAB. The RAB is reviewed event bulletin, of course, the product of the IDC. This activity matches the task comparative measures of to other events and groups of events. As an example of such activity, NetVisa, for example, provides scores for new RAB events based on historical RAB statistics. About 10% of the new RAB events have negative NetVisa scores, so they contradict the historical statistics. The interactive mode is aimed at exclusive processing of a smaller subset of cell 3 and RAB events with a crafted set of parameters. The interactive mode is controlled by a spot check tool interface shown in this slide, which is designed to match the requirements of many different roles. The front-end interface of the spot check tool contains 4 major panes within the red ellipse: cross-correlation, detection, association, and bulletin comparison. There is also a control pane which allows handling various technical like credentials and communication parameters. A successful parameter set can be saved as a preset and used later. There are also several generic presets for specific roles, and the presets are shown here in this pane. There are dozens of defining parameters, of course. Some of them are used often and have gradual influence on processing. Some of them may introduce dramatic changes to the spot check tool performance, even in the allowed range of parameter. Therefore, some parameters are shown on the front panel for basic usage, and some advanced parameters are hidden in the pop-up menus. The left pane in this slide shows an advanced cross-correlation mode. For example, a customer can select master events according to their own preferences. Most important for nuclear test monitoring, one can select a master event nature, is here at the bottom. Natural mining nuclear tests like DPRK or NTS, synthetic master event obtained from historical nuclear test by principal component analysis or from different sources. There exists a fully synthetic set of master events, of course. For the detection pane to the right, the most important parameter is the detection threshold, which is easy to change or to use the default value. The spot check tool is under development, and the updated front-end interface will be soon available for basic testing. The second application is called PARMT. The main component of parameter moment tensor is moment tensor estimation, MTE. MTE is a strategy for depth and magnitude estimation for an event with unknown source mechanism. MTE is similar to a hypothesis test whereby an event depth, magnitude, and moment tensor are proposed. For each parameter set, synthetic seismograms at regional and teleseismic distances are computed and then scored against the observed waveforms. In a uniform search space of depth, magnitude, and focal mechanism, all candidate events are generated and their scores are estimated. Then post-processing is performed, which selects the best fitting event and presents distribution of likely magnitudes, depth, and source mechanisms. A powerful graphical tool, which is here, is developed along for the framework extension and introducing more functionality. Additionally, a synthetic seismogram generator here is introduced into the workflow. This synthetic data can then be channeled into the MT framework, and the seismic network's sensitivity can be calibrated to known solutions. The PARMT testing procedure involves estimation of a moment tensor and depth for events of various natures in order to study the protocol screening criteria, focal mechanism. The probability distributions plot here show the depth, magnitude, and focal mechanism estimation process. In this slide, 4 cases are presented: 3 shallow earthquakes and DPRK5. These examples show the difficulties in interpretation of the source nature. As expected, the DPRK5 has a predominant isotropic part. However, the Canadian earthquake, here you can see, is also characterized by a much larger isotropic component. In terms of focal mechanism, this makes the Canadian earthquake similar to a nuclear test. This slide demonstrates the estimation of the DPRK6 focal mechanism. The initial solution with all parameters tuned to maximum probability is to the left here. It gives a depth of 400 meters, which is physically impossible for an explosion with a magnitude 6.1. In order to find a more feasible solution, it took us to conduct a data quality check and remove a few poor stations as based on a strict quantitative data estimate. Then we obtained the depth estimate of 1.4 kilometers with a larger isotropic component. All DPRK tests have a significant double couple component, as one can judge by the MB/MS difference. The DPRK6 solution looks feasible when compared to other explosions. In the right pane here in this slide, we present Chagai-1 explosion conducted by Pakistan. This is a challenge to screening using the focal mechanism approach. There were 5 charges, with one bigger than the other 4. The double couple part is larger than the isotropic one here, as you can see. Oh, sorry, it's blocked in my here in the red circle. The intersection of the earthquake and explosion populations seems to be an important issue when using the focal mechanism as a screening parameter. This effect is clearly observed in the MB/MS screening criterion as well. For the PARMT application, however, the main goal is the depth estimate with a constraint from the focal mechanism. The depth is a powerful screening parameter. Currently, the uncertainty in depth estimate is constrained to depth-sensitive phases. The inclusion of focal mechanisms allow the usage of full waveform to constrain depth in the source solution. Okay. Oh, no. The next application is related to spectral ratios. The ratio of regional P and S phases as a parameter discriminating natural seismic events and explosions is likely as old as the underground tests themselves. However, its usage is effective only when we have a large number of nuclear tests to build a reliable distribution of P to S ratios in a given region. Here we focus only on the comparison of a DPRK tests and the aftershocks. 4 figures to the left compare spectral ratios from 6 explosions and 5 aftershocks. One can see that from frequency, say 4 Hz, the P2S curve from the nuclear tests start to deviate from the aftershock curves. 2 figures to the right, for IMS stations, Uttarakhand and KSRS demonstrate the average explosion and aftershock curves together with their standard deviations. The distance between the curves is more than 4. Here is the distance, more than 4 standard deviations. This is the probability of to confuse the explosion and aftershock. Since Uttarakhand and KSRS are 2 IMS stations detecting all aftershocks, we merge the measurements using the Mahalanobis distance approach. In this slide, we present the distance of all explosions and aftershocks from the average explosion to the left and the average aftershock to the right. Notice the Mahalanobis distance has a logarithmic scale here. The distance of aftershocks from the average explosion is above 100 and with the largest value of 20,000. And the distance of explosions here from the average explosion is close to 1 unit of distance. So the explosions are close to explosion average, and the aftershocks are very far from the average explosion. Same for the aftershock to the right. The fourth application is connected to the third one. The detection of ultra-weak aftershocks of a DPRK test is a challenge. We use waveform cross-correlation for detection of signals with amplitudes close to microseismic noise level. There are many well-detected aftershocks which can be used as master events together with DPRK tests themselves. The table to the right, to the left, show 29 master events with 57 templates used in routine processing within the multi-master framework. There were more than 100 reliable aftershocks found by, since the first aftershock detected on September 11, 2016. The last 2 aftershock sessions were in April and June 21. June 24 is the last day when an aftershock from DPRK was recorded. We have reported already that the DPRK aftershock activity can be divided into 2 clusters related to DPRK5 and DPRK6 according to their intragroup similarity. The first DPRK aftershock obviously defines the DPRK5 cluster and template 10 red lines here. The events found after the DPRK6, 10 blue lines in the table define the set of DPRK5 templates. To define the cluster, we use only these 22 templates. For example, the April 2021 events belong to DPRK5 and was in June to DPRK6. Figures in the left show the maximum cross-correlation SNR for 31 aftershocks related to the DPRK5 event at Uttarakhand and KSRS. For each of the aftershocks, 2 values are shown: maximum SNR from template from DPRK5 here and the DPRK6 here. So red dot and blue diamond. The same is shown for 30 aftershocks of DPRK6. The highest SNR among 22 templates defines the cluster. So we measured the highest SNR CC for an aftershock among 22 templates and define to which cluster belongs the event. 2 figures show the time evolution of the entire sequence of DPRK aftershocks. Only the DPRK5 and 6 clusters are shown. Other small aftershocks are not attributed because they have very low amplitude signals. 2 clusters represent by different symbols. The parameters which we present are relative magnitude here and the number of associated templates. Aftershocks belonging to the same cluster are usually grouped in time, as happened in April. Here are the aftershocks of the DPRK5, they cluster in time. The interaction between clusters is not instantaneous, but might be associated with a propagation of stress relaxation between 2 damage zones of a DPRK5 and 6. As a consequence, we observe 2 alternating sequences. This slide is about the separation of signals from different quarries based on independent component analysis. This is an important application to separate explosions and earthquakes when they are mixed. Solid arrow lines indicate the input of waveform, so we mix two quarry blasts. Here we see the separation result. So we apply the independent component analysis and retrieve from that mixed figure each of the signal individual from quarry 1 and quarry 2. Important is that we also show a principal component analysis, which is applied to separate waveforms, separate sensors. And here we emphasize with that figure here below that the ICI is different from PCI approach. ICI retains the information on the whole array links between channels. In this slide, we present a few cases. The first case is separating two regional earthquakes at 8 and 5 degrees from MKR, and this is the separation result. This is mixture, and this is separation with different scales. The second case is separating events with close azimuth from mix. The mix is Tahoko and DPRK 3, but the last one is scaled to magnitude 7. The explosion is very well extracted. Case 3 demonstrates good separation of the DPRK3 explosion hidden in the Sumatra April 2012 earthquake. Examples are made for SNR 1 and 0.3, where the signal is DPRK and the noise is earthquake. So the separation is also very effective. This is a heavily loaded slide, of course. We consider a hyper-complex and high-order representation of multi-channel seismic data is where recorded by MS with further processing within the context of a multidimensional models. This is an approach to construction of a multidimensional template for cross-correlation based detection and location with the data recorded at multi-channel IMS seismic installations. Hypercomplex numbers are the natural cases representing three-component digital seismogram samples. Dealing with composite observations like three-component arrays, one may demand higher than four-dimensional algebras. Tensor representation looks natural in this case. When data processed, then data processing would be conducted not on separate waveform projections, but on a multidimensional object. And tensor operations on the data would utilize joint volumetric sensor information and spatial array information. This is an illustration of tensor dimensionality reduction. To the left is the three-dimensional tensor containing n events and m arrays. It can be considered as a 3D cube sliced into n slices. The reduced tensor to the right here has less meaningful slices. It is important that such ND reduction is accompanied by significant noise reduction. Compare the figures, noise here and noise here. The tensor dimension can be higher when using three-component arrays. We have a 4D cube. Example of Quaternion principal component. So left, this is the three-component seismogram, as you can see. Center is a pure Quaternion. This is the first principal components I, J, and K. And this is the first complex Quaternion component of first three principal components. So this can be used as a template for cross-correlation, for example. When processing sensor components separately, one misses the relations between them. In the hypercomplex or Quaternion approach, we avoid component-wise and long vector techniques and aim to process vector signals in a concise way using quaternionic signals. Such a model allows extending the concept of modulus and phase to vector signals having samples evolving in 3D space. The model is linked with the signal magnitude, while the 3D phase is directly representing of a three-dimensional particle motion. For detection beams at array station, one of many processing problems is the absence of empirical relative arrival times at the array sensors. Low velocity inclusions beneath the array may introduce significant disturbance in the relative arrival times and amplitudes, as the example of NVR here shows. Variations in amplitude and arrival times delays are related to geology, in this case below the sensors. For example, we have limestone, tuff, granite, sandstone, basaltic lava for one station, and this leads to potentially significant beam loss and reduction in station sensitivity. Ambient noise methods are passive methodology to retrieve velocity models in the uppermost layers. Spatial correlation of seismic noise and horizons, horizontal to vertical component spectral noise ratio could be both used for that purposes. In recent decades, this application of these methods gave accurate Earth's velocity models in spatial ranges from tens of meters to continental scales. This slide shows some results of a spatial cross-correlation technique applied to non-IMS stations. Sensor locations in the upper left corner show the strings and randomly distributed sensors. To the right, we have a figure with the velocity estimates, which reveals the high and low velocity zones which can impact the recording of signals. We conducted a few preliminary studies to estimate available free software and process data from free IMS arrays, NVR, TexR, and PDR with a GeoSpy package. More work required to make it in compliance with a SESAME European project guideline. All sites demonstrate different resonance frequencies that can be inverted into the layer structure. This is the future work. So, as a conclusion, we have a number of applications which can be used for expert technical analysis. These applications are open on the market or developed by IDC. The future usage of these applications depends on the results of extensive testing and support of a monitoring community. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for your detailed presentation. I think we have not yet received any questions. Christoph Sariagotis is supporting me in selecting questions from what you put into the portal. So please, I would like to encourage you to type in your questions. But meanwhile, Ivan, I have a question that I would like to pose. Since this is a talk on 25th anniversary of the CTBT, could you review a bit the history of expert technical analysis? Because this is something that we are still working on to develop. When did it start? Where do you see it going? So more generally and not so much into detail as your presentation was.
Okay, I did not participate the negotiations and signature of the treaty like other participants maybe. And I'm not sure what happened during that discussion, but the treaty contains the expert technical analysis as an important tool to help the states parties to understand the source of the events. And in that sense, the range of the applications is limited maybe by the treaty, but the soul of the treaty says that we can apply any new methods when it's developed, if this method can help us to understand the source of the event better for the purposes of the treaty and for the assistance to the states parties. I think that this is a small part of applications which we can use in seismic, but in hydroacoustic and infrasounds, there are many more applications, and I am sure that in radionuclides you have also a lot of approaches which are not used in routine processing and can be used in the expert technical analysis of radionuclide data. With the progress of science, in our case is global seismology and applied seismology, we get new algorithms, new data, new understanding how the Earth is constructed and how it behaves. So that helps a lot to re-estimate even the historical data from the nuclear test, and the session is about that, of course.
Yeah, thank you for answering. Since we still don't have any question from the audience, I follow up on what I just asked. And please be more specific. I would like to know about how developed the expert technical analysis methods and procedures in the test ban treaty organization. And you can talk about all kinds of theoretical methods based on cross-correlation or based on moment tensor analysis and so on. But when did we start in the CTBTO to implement methods? And where are we in this process in your view? And where do you think will this process go?
Well, in the first slides, I presented a long text, which of course was very long to be read. It definitely, the slides which define the expert technical analysis procedure. So it can be requested by the states party or by the organization. And depending on the data, of course, if organization asks requests to do something, the data should come from IMS only. But if a states party asks requests for that expert technical analysis, then the data can be from the states party. And we have some tools to process maybe some data which potentially can be sent to us by states parties, but some data, of course, we don't have specific tools to process. So there are so many branches of expert technical analysis, so many routes it can go depending on who requests and what data we use, that the question is for discussion of a working group. It's not for me to define how to behave if some states party requests an expert technical analysis. So this is more already shaped by politics.
Thank you, Ivan. The time is over. And even though we now received 2 questions or maybe 3, I'm sorry, now it's time to move into the panel that follows next, and we need to have a quick transition.
Thank you for attention. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Ivan. Are you ready to start the panel? Yeah. Wonderful. So I say welcome again, and now we're having a panel, and this is on historic nuclear tests. And you know, the mission of the CTBT monitoring, international monitoring system, is to identify signals from an event that should never happen. This, of course, has the effect that we don't have a chance to get experience in how do these kinds of signals look like, and how effective are we in detecting them. The announced DPRK tests are the exception, and the problem of that is they are all in one single location on the planet Earth. And what about all the other regions? How effective can we be to detect a nuclear test signature from anywhere on the Earth? So historic data and signals from nuclear tests that occurred in the past are extremely useful and important for exactly this purpose. And this is the topic of this panel. And I'm very happy to greet the panelists. And since I'm the convener, not the moderator, I pass on the word now to Ron Sung-ji, to moderate the session. So Song, please take over.
Hi, Martin. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure that we finally all got in after a little bit technical experiment. Yes, it's a great pleasure here. And this session is so important that this panel, I got the assignment from the PTS colleagues, but actually at some point I might need your help, Martin, that you might need to take over in case we have any additional technical difficulty. Let me see if I can, let's see. I thought I'm trying to find the instruction I got the other day, but I think at the beginning we would provide 5 minutes to every panelist to do a self-introduction and also briefly cover some of the key points, which would be some of those questions PTS suggested. And I remember there is a suggested order. I thought we would start with, I think it's Paul Richard first, right? Martin, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. If that's the case, I do see, let's see, I have Dave Bauer, I have Ina, and let me see, I have Lars also. Let me see if I can change the layout to see all of invited colleagues, panelists. Well, let me see. Let me move the cursor over. I do see Paul. All right, and I also see Mr. Wang of Chinese NDC in Beijing. Glad to see you. Yeah, so I think at this point we can start with Paul, if that's all right. Paul, the floor
Fine.
is yours.
Thank you for setting up this panel, and thanks for inviting my participation. Can you wave a hand, Rong Song, if you can hear me? Good. So the title, Lessons from Historic Nuclear Test Explosions and Value of Recorded Seismic recorded Signals for Monitoring Science. We do this work because seismology especially is an observational science, and most nuclear test explosions took place in the era before digital recording became the standard in the 1980s. If we scan and digitize old data, high quality old data, well, then unique records from the past will be available to scientists using current and future methods of analysis, but they won't do it if we lose unique data. That's my main message. And the United States carried out more than 850 nuclear test explosions from 1945 to 1979 prior to the digital recording era, with one or two exceptions. These many tests were done in different environments, and I'd like to begin with a map. So now then, let's see how this works. Yes, good. And so I'm showing a map with the location in the Western United States of the very first nuclear explosion called Trinity, done in July 16, 1945, and to the west, southwest, in Tucson, Arizona, is shown at that observatory the location of a high-quality, short-period Benioff seismometer that was operating at the time. And here is shown the largest regional seismic waves in a display that is part of the digitizing process. At the top is shown that digitized seismogram at a distance of 437 kilometers from the very first nuclear test explosion. It shows about 150 seconds of the PN, PG, LG wave train and a spectrogram with signal going up to above about 3 hertz. And it turns out that these are not the largest signals in the record. because there is infrasound as well. The test was conducted at the top of a tower about 30 meters high, and shown here are some ray paths for infrasound that day, calculated for air conditions at that time and latitude, and done for a spherical Earth. So Trinity, in this case on the left, there are on a forward branch of infrasound waves that arrive at Tucson after one bounce halfway between source and station, and then coming in somewhat later, waves going more than 100 kilometers up into the stratosphere on a backward branch, also arriving at Tucson. Here are those regional waves again. They are the most challenging to digitize. Here with that forward branch, you see the minute marks and the infrasound that arrives at Tucson from the Trinity explosion 21 minutes after PN, and then a second infrasound signal, the one that goes way up there in the stratosphere. And these are the biggest signals in the ground motion as recorded in Tucson, Arizona, 23 minutes after the PN arrivals, even though that wave has gone up into extremely rarefied atmospheres high up there, it comes down with a very strong signal. Not so well known is the Trinity site, a large chemical explosion conducted 10 weeks earlier on May the 7th, 1945. And this slide shows the setup with about 108 tons of TNT. For this one, in a map view, I'm showing the large dark splotch. This is a photograph taken from the air. Let's see, it's taken just a little more than 24 hours after the Trinity explosion. And it shows in this view to the south, the location of that chemical explosion conducted 10 weeks earlier in May of 1945. And I have here an example, what I would say is an aspiration. In our modern work today, we find that we can do very accurate work with cross-correlation methods, looking at two seismic sources not very far away from each other. So we could do some of that work here to learn a little more about the Trinity explosion, because its origin time was not properly recorded, whereas that for the May 7th explosion was so recorded. Moving on to another type of nuclear explosion, after only 16 years following the Trinity explosion, was conducted the very largest explosion of all, 1961, October, in Novaya Zemlya. But in that intervening 16-year period, so much happened, purely in the monitoring side. And as a matter of scientific understanding, a huge development, in particular with the International Geophysical Year, was deployed a global network of long period sensors at 17 sites shown here, and even one to the north of Greenland at Alert on Ellesmere Island, only 2,200 kilometers over the pole by a path from Novaya Zemlya. And here is my last graphic. It shows the view of a P wave, a Rayleigh wave from the Bolsh-Ivan, more than 50 megaton explosion of October 30, 1961. And an hour later, there's an hour per line on this 24-hour seismogram with a period of more than 600 seconds at first, and then a normally dispersed wave train, an enormous air wave traveling about 33 hours to go around the whole Earth. And this is another extreme example, truly, of a historic explosion and historic recording. And at sites around the world on that global network that I showed are the unique signals, some recorded on the minor arc from Novaya Zemlya, from more than 6 nuclear test explosions of more than 10 megatons. So that's another extreme of a type of historic explosion. And as we contemplate the utility of using historic data, we got to ask the question, should we focus on specialized issues to do with some particular small explosion conducted in a strange environment and sediments perhaps, or the big picture, some of these things that have changed world history? Well, we can do both. We can look at the very largest historic explosions. We can look at specialized issues of great interest to a handful of experts. So at present, I continue to do the work on large explosions, but also to take account of particular historic explosions of some interest. In Vienna, Ola Dahlmann asked me to help organize the first of these S&T sessions in 2005. Here we are now, 16 years later, is it? I'm glad that we're looking at the issue of historic data. It's something that we can learn from today, and I welcome community efforts to make sure that this type of data is available to modern analysts and to analysts who will do our work in the future. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about one of the, I believe, more important subjects for us to address. Thank you, Rongsong.
Thank you very much, Paul. As Paul mentioned, he was the one who got the assignment to help organizing the S&T meeting since the very beginning. And over the years, Paul has advised the PrepCom, the CTBT PrepCom PTS. In addition, Paul has been advising the US government, different agencies as well. Basically, he's very well known. And in fact, I have to say, on this legacy data rescue issue, he has been the one inspiring me over the past several years. And at State Department in the United States, we have been using the open and full competition to solicit proposals to do R&D. And one of the topics we, in recent years, have included is legacy data rescue effort. And we have been funding several projects along this line. And let me share the slides with you. I think I need to move to the, can you see, I suppose you can see the slides, right? What I'm reporting just briefly, several slides to cover the basics. Basically, the DPRK declared test between 2006 and 2017. Those are so important. They offered, from the scientific point of view, that was a great opportunity for all of us to test different techniques, and we gained a lot of experience. But fundamentally, that experience is confined to a very limited geographic area. So we know that, all right, the folks have made great progress in absolute and relative locations, and also estimate the overburden and magnitude and so on. But we still need to learn more. We need to apply the experience, the techniques to broader area. And in that case, like Paul mentioned, we have a very vast, huge database of the historical data recorded in the old time. So today's meeting, the panel, we are going to talk about how do we identify the priorities, how do we expand the current effort already ongoing, and what additional research we might need to do, we might need to support. So I'm going to take from the government perspective of funding agency, sponsoring agency to offer what we would think, and we would like to hear from the panelists from different NDCs and different institutes and labs to offer their insights. Now, I borrowed this graphic from Paul's talk and also from the CTBTO web. Like Paul mentioned, that if you look at over the time, over the history, there are so many events, treaty relevant events, nuclear explosions in the early days, in red, shown in red in the right, but those were recorded on the analog instrument. So we need to pay attention to those, try to make the data available, usable. So that's why we need to do the scanning, digitization, but it's not a straightforward task. We need to make sure the resolution is high enough. We need to have the calibration and so on. Now, at State Department, we don't quite do the hands-on analysis or digitization per se. So we would provide the support. We use the broad agency announcement, BAAs, which is open to the public, to all the institutions, all the FFRDC research facilities, and even partner agencies. We included one topic in recent years to call for proposals to rescue the legacy explosion data set. And in addition, we also have topics calling for proposals to do region-specific geophysical calibration. Excuse me. And we invite, excuse me, encourage both the active source experiment, the so-called the mini JVE-like experiment, in addition to the passive seismic infrasound and other geophysical deployment. But keep in mind, even if we get the data, we share the data, that's only the first step. And we still need to invest and support the research on improving innovative analytical tools so that we can apply that. Now, I just give some example. Here is a busy slide. I'm showing you some of the ongoing digitization efforts we are doing. Some efforts in Central Asia, in Kazakhstan, in Kyrgyzstan, and some, like the lower left, here is a project at Harvard University focusing on the standardized procedure for digitization suitable for different platforms. And we also have a project focusing on regions where we have a team, a consortium, basically, including several countries in the Balkans, and they work together to get the data, the archive, digitized step by step. So, but in addition to those digitization efforts, one of the questions the PTS offered us, this panel, to think about is what additional arrangement, what additional task we should pursue to augment the efforts we already have. In addition to the operational agency, their routine data recording and so on, but we also have the digitization to rescue the legacy data. Here, I would like to highlight a very impressive project that I witnessed over the years at our SNT and also the East Asia regional workshop set up for the NDCs. Basically, this is a bilateral arrangement between China and Republic of Korea. Basically, they share the common need to understand that region. So this is a very good example of a region-specific cooperation, trying to augment the IMS data. We know that IMS does meet the design goal, but in addition, if you want to look at very, very small event in a certain specific area, to look at the details of the seismicity, here is what they have got. They have got a ring of stations, and this kind of data provided to both countries. They share the data to perform the detailed, in-depth analysis over the years. that's a very impressive approach that we might want to think about. And I think I have 5 slides, so that will be all I have got. Thank you very much. And I covered several questions raised by the PTS. So I think we would defer all the questions later, I suppose. And the next one, if I may suggest, I am looking at the screen. Perhaps Lars from Germany, a German NDC, you could take the floor for the next 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Rong-san. But I guess it was David. So because we want to make this story on the development in seismology, so I would recommend that David would give his short overview before I do so.
If Dave Bowers to go before you.
Yeah.
All right. If that's all right, Dave Bowers, are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be. Hello, everyone. Greetings from the United Kingdom. I hope that vaccine will be with you soon. Right, so a little introduction. So I'm a seismologist and I've been working at AWE Blackness since 1994. I've been involved with some of the policy making organs of sort of Working Group B and also a lot of the expert groups on event screening and things over the years, but been here since 1994 and the institution is the United Kingdom National Data Centre, and I really want to tell the story of Black Nest. So the story starts in 1958 with the Conference of Experts in Geneva that was mentioned yesterday on trying to determine ways of identifying nuclear explosions in the context of a nuclear test ban treaty. So the experts were pretty clear how to identify atmospheric and underwater explosions. The problem was underground. And one of the only ways they could think of to identify underground explosions was seismology. Now, the head of the UK technical delegation at that conference was William Penny, and apparently he came back to the UK and explained that essentially observational seismology was a Stone Age science and that something should be done. So this is really in cooperation, I guess, with the US VILA Uniform program. The UK government in 1960 set up a research group to improve seismic detection of underground nuclear explosions. And this group moved to Black Nest in 1961. So this year represents 60 years of forensic seismology at Black Nest, which is something of an achievement, I guess. So there are lots of old cardboard boxes with lots of paper records. So the original concept back in 1960 was to develop steerable seismometer arrays. So there were some radar engineers who'd been thinking about the problem, and they came up with a prototype cross array design with 10 or 11 seismometers per line, spaced around 1 kilometer apart. So 10 kilometers to maybe 20 kilometers along each line. And these data were recorded on magnetic tape on a 24-track magnetic analog tape and stored using frequency modulation. And then these were played back using a 24-track tape loop, which enabled analog processing to improve the signal to noise, or so-called beamforming. So there were some experiments conducted and a design was arrived at, and then there was a temporary deployment in 1961 at Pole Mountain in Wyoming in the United States. And the aim was to record P waves at a distance for around 1,000 kilometers from the Nome underground nuclear test, the 10th of December 1961. So Nome was installed, it was about 3.1 kilotons. And the reason the 1,000 kilometer distance was of interest was because at that point they only had a few underground explosion data points, and it suggested there was a minimum in the amplitude distance curve at around 1,000 kilometers. Anyway, the Nome explosion happened. Pole Mountain recorded the signals, and the analog processing produced a record to improve the signal to noise. So that was a success. However, the surprising result was that Pole Mountain also recorded P signals from the first Soviet underground test in Kazakhstan on the 2nd of February 1962. Now, Pole Mountain is nearly 10,000 kilometers away from the Vienna Mountain in Kazakhstan. So this is a huge paradigm change because you could now record signals at long range, which meant you could build a monitoring network with hundreds of stations rather than tens of thousands of stations. And this, of course, ended up being a lot of the basis of the international monitoring system. So after Pole Mountain, the UK actually installed so-called Commonwealth arrays in the early 1960s, and 3 of these are current IMS stations around the world. So there's a UK station in Scotland at Eskdalemer, which was established in 1962. There's a station in Canada, Yellowknife, which was established in 1962, and the station in Warramunga in Australia, hosted by Australia, which was established in 1965. Now, interestingly, perhaps we asked about the lessons. So the design and operation of these arrays was published in the open literature. And I note that 2 of some of the very best stations in the IMS in Kazakhstan at Borovoy and Kichatov have a similar cross-array design. I'm sure this is by chance. Anyway, the Commonwealth type arrays in Scotland, Canada and Australia have recorded thousands of analog explosion P signals, which have been digitized and archived over time with the important metadata, such as the calibration information and the channel order on the 24 track tapes. And then it was realized in 1977 that continuous data was also valuable. And so they stopped reusing the tapes and the tapes were archived. And so we had 4,600 analog tapes in our store. And in 2007, we started a program to digitize and preserve these data with quality assurance and quality checks. And I can speak to these, the process that we did to do this later on, if required, but it involves baking the tapes in an oven, intriguingly. We also, the arrays went digital in the 1980s. We had something like 31,500 digital tapes, which have all been read and preserved, and we've got about 20,000 left to do the quality assurance checks on. So with that, I can speak to some of the questions that I understand later at the appropriate time, but with that, I will sign off. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Could Lars take over the floor?
Thank you, Ron-san, and also thanks to the PTS for giving me the opportunity to present something. Well, just my name is Lars Serrano, and okay, so I'm the head of the German NDC and the Federal Seismological Survey for at least 2 years now, and I would like to give a brief overview of some of the questions which have been introduced by the PTS for this panel discussion. First of all, I just want to elaborate a little bit on the question 1, the data used by CTBTO from the DPRK announced tests. So as we have learned in the previous presentation by Ivan Kitov, so there is an important tool which is called expert technical analysis for where you elaborate more on specific events. And this is what we have done here, for instance, for the DPRK6 test. This was the last North Korean test in September 2017. So this is here the link. Also, there is a freely available paper which is in Solid Earth, has been published. And when you look at the pictures, so we analyzed also the effect of the topography on the P waves. And for teleseismic waves, we have here the analysis of the moment tensors. So on the second picture, you see when it's more to the upper part of this rectangular, there would be a pure explosion. So you see for the main event in September 2017, so we have more or less an explosion, and 8.5 minutes later, so we had the opposite. So it was more an implosion. So it was really a collapse of this test site. And here also we make use of the not only the IMS data, so as an NDC, of course, we have these degrees of freedom also to consider other freely available seismological stations. So this is what we have done, and for a relative location, which provides an interesting picture similar to those which has been shown by the official North Korean when they closed their test site. And here the other picture shows the results of a differential INSAR, interferometric satellite aperture radar picture. So the red colors mark an uplift, and the blue colors mark a subsidence. So it's more than 10 centimeters here for this Mount Mantab, which is gray. Here you have really extremely high uplift and downlift and subsidence, and also we analyzed the release of radionuclides from the test site. And in a book we have published 1 year before, so we also gave an overview on the verification of all the other tests. And this is, for our understanding, the data we have been used for analyzing the DPRK test. And at least, of course, we have learned now in the 80s, most of the seismometers were turned from analog to digital. So in Germany, so we had the very worldwide, the first digital seismological network. This was a Grafenberg array with 13 elements, and where you can retrieve freely available via an FDSN web service digital data starting at 1976. And with this, of course, we were able to define some seismological fingerprints from most of the historic nuclear underground tests. Another question, so why have no radionuclides been discovered following most DPRK announced? Well, so in essence, of course, we had 6 tests, and for at least 4 tests, we have evidence of radionuclides. At least only the May 2009 and September 2016 tests, there were no noble gases associated at any IMS site. But of course, what we have to take into account is, so we have a very sparse network with the IMS, and so we see where you have to detect the noble gases, and here it would be also interesting, but to our understanding, I think it's more a P5 issue. So what about the historic underground nuclear explosion? Do they have really at remote places also some evidences of radioxenon? Because what you have to take into account for an underground test, so you really have these high temperatures, you have a shock wave creating more like rock glasses, which also works like a containment. And at the very end, so we have to take into also, we have to consider that for at least this 4 test where we have really evidences found, and we're able with sophisticated atmospheric transport modeling really to nail down the detections with the test site, I think it should be considered as a great success. And and also when we talk about what we can learn from the historic data, or what maybe some future technologies, again, of course, so we have, of course, this fingerprint here on the left side. You see here some images of the recordings at our station in the Bavarian forest, the PS19 seismic array from North Korea, and you can see easily that the P signals for here 5 tests are more or less the same. And of course, you can make use again of this freely available Sentinel mission data for analyzing differential INSAR images. And of course, what is also interesting, so currently you have more than 10,000 3-component stations worldwide which are freely available. So the red dots here just indicate them. This is an image taken from the ISC, from International Seismological Center. And we can also make use of these stations to really look into the small events, not only the big ones. And also there are some other new techniques which allows us to denoise data. So there are new insights with to our understanding with machine learning. And just to conclude, so what we have learned from historic tests, of course, we know to our understanding of what is the impact of a nuclear explosion. So when you look from the space, so you see here the images from the national from the Nevada National Security site. So you clearly can see the subsidence images from the satellites, and also here what has been done for this Beirut explosion and analysis, which will be which has been accepted by Nature's scientific reports, which will be published soon. So we have analyzed the infrasound, the seismic data, and as well as the destruction from the satellite images, and combine this with the shock waves, which has been collected from historic data. And with all these three analyses, we were able to come up with a coherent result with respect to the yield of this explosion. And so to our understanding here, this would be an interesting example for making use of the historic data and transfer it into modern approaches. And I guess this concludes my presentation. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Lars, for covering all the different technical aspects of the North Korean test, and also including the applying the techniques to the more recent, very recent Beirut event to show how robustness and the utility of our techniques and capabilities. We would like to invite the next panelist, Ina. Are you ready? Ina is from the Kazakh NDC. She is located in Almaty, but they also have the Kurchatov facility, which is both are very important since the when the Soviet Union broke up, we had the Kazakhstan. They basically supported the effort, took the initiative to dismantle the Semipalatinsk, and over the years, Kazakhstan has offer us a lot of opportunities to learn the history and learn to do the work together. So Ina, the floor is yours.
In Soviet time, the Institute of the Physics of the Earth had two complex seismological expeditions in Garm, Tajikistan, and in Talgar in Kazakhstan. The archive of this expedition have seismogram from several hundreds of sensitive seismic stations installed in the Soviet Union territory from 1940. In addition to seismic records, there were records of microbarographs, unique experiments, digital data on magnetic types. Unfortunately, complex seismological expedition archive in Garm was lost during the civil war in Tajikistan. In Kazakhstan, starting from the 1991, after the Soviet Union collapse, the property of Russian organization located on the territory of former Soviet countries was transferred to the national organizations. In 1994, the property of Talgar complex seismological expedition, including the archive of analog seismograms and seismic station, were transferred to Кассель-Защита, but the Institute of the Physics of the Earth had the right to use and manage the property. In 2002, complex seismological expedition was closed, and archive of historical seismograms became the property of Prognoz Corporation of Кассель-Защита. In 2002, the complex Prognoz Corporation was closed in 2000. 13, the archive was put into the abandoned, unguarded building. It was subject to vandalism. There was a fire in building that could destroy the invaluable seismograms. In 2050, 2060, the archive of complex seismology expedition was moved to Kazakh National Data Center. In 2008, we started to work. We start to the work arrangement of the archive. Currently, the work of archive saving the conducted and the data used for different research. In Central Asia, institutes specialized in seismology aim at study tectonic earthquakes. The organization possesses the archives of seismogram station located at the regional distances from the test sites. The organization do not know the value of nuclear explosions of seismograms and do not share the data. In Kazakhstan, during the Soviet time, the data of peaceful nuclear explosion region and meridian were used for deep seismic zoning of the Earth. The data of Lazurit model explosion conducted to create a dam by destroying of mountain slope in Murjik site at the Semipalatinsk site on December 7, 1974, with yield 1.7 kiloton, were used to study the behavior of testing buildings, part of the temporary typical seismic resistant building construction in the near field of the explosion. The underground nuclear explosion seismograms were used to seismic discrimination. Currently, the regional travel time curves were constructed from the different regions of Kazakhstan. The induced events of effects of the environment studies, the dynamic processes of the region of large nuclear test site. The nuclear test parameters are precised and historical seismicity of the Semipalatinsk test site was investigated. What we need to done to save historical data. Some organizations want to start to process of historical seismogram saving, but encountered with a range of problems. First problem. At the present time, the generation that work with historical analog seismograms have quit their work. The young seismologists work with digital seismograms processing and need to train to work with the analog records. So it is necessary to arrange such courses. In Central Asia, such courses conducted with our National Data Center for the seismologists from the former Soviet Union country. The second, first, the seismogram should be scanned with good resolution. As this process does not require such amount of time of digitization. There not a lot of digitization software that is accessible and easy to use. A lot of centers want to start the digitization work, but do not know where to take the suitable software. In this format and which format to save data and how to start. It is necessary to choose best software for digitization, make it perfect, adapt to all types of seismograms and include into the NDC in the box. It is necessary to choose and recommend to NDC the most appropriate data format, probably SID, as it is quite widespread. There are a lot of conventional software into other data formats. It is necessary to elaborate a list of data necessary to be saved together with digitized seismograms so that the metadata are not lost. It is possible to digitize only a small part of archive as a lot of seismograms of large explosion are clipped. And all the seismograms having had photo paper bad quality. Such seismograms can be processing and a seismic bulletin can be made. It is necessary to give recommendation which parameters should be saved. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ina. And well, for the PTS to host this panel covering different time zones, I suppose we have right now here in the Washington, D.C. area, we are 6:25 in the morning and we have 6:25 p.m. in Beijing. So we are very happy today to have Mr. Xiaoming Wang from Beijing CTBT, Beijing NDC and the lab. Xiaoming, Mr. Wang.
Hello. Hi. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see my old friend Rong Song and Martin and Paul Richard here. Firstly, I want to thank Executive Secretary Dr. Lassina Zerber and all the colleagues of PTS to provide us so grand platform to share our experience here. I want to talk about how to fully utilize the MS data and IDC bulletins to improve the monitoring capabilities of CTBTO. According to the treaty, make available all data, both raw and processed, and any reports, products to all state parties is one of the PTS verification responsibilities. For this purpose, the state parties and the PTS had to cooperate and carried out fruitful efforts. As mentioned in Workgroup B 56 report, the total number of installed stations of MS is over 92% and certified stations is almost 90%. Timeless requirements for REB was met almost 96% of the time. As a global monitoring systems, PTS has accumulated a large number of monitoring data and result bulletins of earthquake, infrasound, acoustic, and radionuclide events since 1998. How to effectively use this data and results to further improve the monitoring capabilities of the international monitoring systems is an important challenge we are facing. We all know that in recent years, data processing technicals and measures such as big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning are continually emerged and improved, which allows us to comprehensively use historic monitoring data and standard events bulletins to establish new data processing methods and a new processing framework. It provided us a useful reference for the traditional pipeline-based data process technology, which includes the sequence of signal detection, phase identification, event location, magnitude, calculation, and other processes. The establishment of new processing method and framework based on historical events knowledge requires a large number of standard events to support. Therefore, how to ensure the consistency of historical monitoring data and the standardization of existing event bulletins should be the future priority of MS and IDC. The 2013 standard data set provided by PTS is a big step toward this, but only 1 year of data is not enough. So I have some suggestions for this. First, make sure about the consistency and authenticity of historic monitoring data. Focused on solving the problems of the inconsistent station parameters that may be caused by the upgrade of the station facilities, and it's necessary for further improve the quality control of station parameters. Second, analyze historic monitoring data for further improve the accuracy of the IDC event bulletin. Establish a grading standard for historic events and such like ground truth event. And standardize all historic events, include relative parameters of the events. Provided a data set of standard events for the establishment of a new method in which processing the use of group event relative location, relative magnitude calculating, and so on should be considered. At the same time, the quality control of future event bulletins should be improved. Third, make full use of VDAC and make full use of the capacity of the NDCs. Provided an open platform include standard dataset to develop new processing methods based on artificial intelligence and machine learning and so on. Third, I think the development of the blockchain technical also provided us useful idea for ensure the consistency and authenticity of monitoring data and event bulletin. This is my thought. This is about thought on my personal view of on these issues. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Wang. Martin, at this point, I think regretfully, Yuri Dubasov would not be able to join us. So I suppose we can, among ourselves, to go back to the 8 questions and also see if there is any question from the audience as well. So Martin, would you take over?
Yes, thank you, Ronsong. Few remarks at this moment. Yes, you're right. Yuri Dubasov unfortunately had to withdraw on short notice, so he's not available today. I want to raise the attention to the audience that we are making the slides available on the event platform. One set of slides is already there, and the others will soon be uploaded as well in the location of this panel. Then the audience is invited to ask questions, and Ronsong, I already have a question to ask that I will mention in the moment next. I also want to mention that we have around 300 participants watching live our current panel. So that's information you will probably be happy about. So imagine this would be a room in the Hofburg or wherever, how many people are there. I think that's great. The first question from the audience that I would like to pass on to the panel members is actually 2 questions that I combine. The first question is, what is the actual challenge in saving the historical data? I know some of you have already said a lot about this, but maybe you can go back and say, what is the biggest challenge? Is it the digitization, or is it obtaining it from institutes and states? And connected to this is another question, is there special difficulties associated with very old data? The very early, oh no, this question is about early digital data. Is that a problem? Is there a technical problem with the early digital data similar to the analogous data? For example, is the sampling are they sampled with enough detail to be analyzed by the new tools? So these are the first questions from the audience. Please, back to you, Ronson.
Right. I think among the panelists, my suggestion would be, well, rather than assigning the question to any panelist arbitrarily, I would suggest that among ourselves, if you could raise your hand, then I would pass the question to you. That's what Martin and I, and also with Ivan Titov the other day, we discussed. So at this point, let's see. Paul, could you say something about the biggest challenge in your view regarding the data rescue effort? Is it technical about the scanning, about the digitization, or about the obtaining the agreement or access to the old data?
Well, we have had this problem now for several years, and the record shows that different countries have approached the challenge in different ways. In Europe, Italy has shown substantial leadership in the work of finding good records, of scanning them, and of digitizing them in some cases, and in making scans and records available. Other countries at the other extreme, as we have heard from Ina, the challenge sometimes in avoiding fire and vandalism, or even, to me, almost worse, is some countries simply have not cared about this and have consciously thrown away really important data. So there's an enormous range of practical experience. So within that framework, I would identify 4 aspects that are worth addressing. And one is the most basic level, knowing what is available in a given country. In countries large and small, among the expert seismologists in that country, what knowledge is there of what analog data potentially could be made available? Then, to the extent that that knowledge does become available, there is the question of emphasizing scanning data or scanning and digitizing. Scanning addresses 2 important problems. A high quality scan preserves the information in the original, and in that sense, it freezes the gradual loss of information as an original record deteriorates. That's the first success of scanning. The second is potentially that it permits a remote user to see the record without having to visit some facility far, far away in the hands of potentially an uncooperative institution. So scanning is very helpful. Digitizing, of course, is done now. Potentially in future, we can only hope that it will continue to be done and potentially will be done better. So between scanning and digitizing, my choice would always be scanning, but then for particular studies, of course, digitizing is necessary in order to apply modern methods of analysis. To do the work of analysis, we need the metadata. Do we know the latitude and longitude? What is the quality of the clock? Can we read time with a specified degree of precision and accuracy on the record? And the final issue that matters is to speak to the issue of a delivery system. If the work is done to scan, if the work is done to digitize, for what audience is that work done? Is it to be done by the institution that paid for the work? Is it to be done in an open way for a larger community. So you asked for a short review of these questions. I don't know if it's possible for me still to share. Let's see if I can do this. Yes, I believe on screen may be shown now a paper published that I co-authored with Peggy Helwig, who has just been elected as the president of the Seismological Society of America, in which we addressed the 4 questions I've just laid out, and very much from a United States perspective, described, and the paper here you see from that digital object identifier number. It's an open access paper describing our experience with trying to do this in an organized way in a very large country, not only from the perspective of saving explosion data, but also for explaining for saving earthquake data. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Martin, do you think that we have covered the first question? Any other panelists willing to offer additional insights? What I learned from one of my contractor teams about digitization is that they realize it's not just using the big fancy scanner and then digitize that you would get everything. They found that, well, you need some software to handle some situations where the digitized waveforms will be skewed because you see the shape not quite the same as the original one, and they had to use some software to correct that. And that's something that I didn't realize before we funded those projects. So the performance of the digitization efforts in our case is that in addition to the host country, for instance, INA, her institute in Kazakhstan, working with the Michigan State University, and they also invited one entity that in our nuclear monitoring community probably did not think of, that's Library of Congress. There is a team in the Library of Congress. They have been doing the archiving and also all sorts of data rescue, basically the old historical record, paper records or books or whatever. They try to rescue those media, just similar to we try to save the seismograms. And Michigan State University, working with INA's institute, used to be called the IGR, now it's part of the NNC. They are teaming with the Library of Congress to improve the digitization of the tapes that are in Kazakhstan. That's just one example. Sometimes we might benefit from different partners, not necessarily a routine player in our nuclear monitoring community. And currently, like I said in my brief talk, we are pursuing this legacy data rescue effort. But just like PTS pointed out, we don't know what we don't know. So we have to rely on all the researchers out there to tell us what kind of data are available and worth rescuing, and then we try to support the effort. So it's a teaming even between the sponsoring agency and the performer actually doing the data rescue effort.
Ronsong, David wants to take the floor.
Sure.
I think.
Go ahead, David.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so I guess I follow up, agree with Paul's 4 points there. Our experience so far at the UK NDC has been to try to preserve magnetic tapes, both analog and digital. And the problem with the tapes is that they degrade over time because the glue which holds the magnetic particles to the substrate absorbs water and it becomes sticky. So if you try to run the tape through a machine, it just shreds. But turns out that we were just catching the end of both the banking industry and the hydrocarbon exploration industry having just digitized all of their analog data. And it turns out that these old tapes, it turns out if you bake the tapes for 3 days at 40 degrees Celsius, it fixes this sticky feature of the glue for the magnetite particles, and you can then run the tapes through a machine. So the next problem we faced with this was the data were recorded using frequency modulation. So you had to do the demodulation, and in the past, when I mentioned the edited segments from explosions from old tapes back in the 1960s, there was the demodulation was done in a piece of hardware, and getting this reproduced into multiple versions so that you could run it on a tape machine would be very expensive because you need a lot of equipment. But it turns out that there was a recent scientific advance in 2007. You could now buy a bit of kit, a chip, with which would digitize 8 channels at 50,000 samples a second. So with 3 of these together, you could digitize all 24 channels. So the data channels plus the time code, plus the 2 error correction channels for how the tape's kind of wobbling through under the tape head. So we then worked out how to do the demodulation in software, which involves optimal low-pass differentiating filters, among other things, which I've been learning about. Essentially, we then downsample through a series of stages, essentially to give output at 100 samples a second. So this downsampling increases the dynamic range. So we're now, from these analog tapes, we think we're at 100 samples a second at a dynamic range of around 21 bits. Sorry. So a significant improvement on the old digitized records, which were done using 12-bit digitizers with the old hardware for demodulation. So there are a few of the lessons on the analog side. On the other lesson is actually, if we were to do all this again, don't put the time code on the edge of the tape, because it was always channel 24, and that's the edge of the tape, and that's the bit that gets damaged over time. But I guess we're not going to do this anymore. So obviously the other thing is these were Vienna time codes, so sampling at 100 samples a second makes them much, much easier for an analyst to read. This is another language you'll have to learn if you're moving from digital seismologist to an analog seismologist. I think you're correct. This is going to be a big ask. I used to work with people who could read these time codes just like a book. It's scary. I think the other part, there was a question about digital tapes. So again, the digital tapes get sticky. And there's always a problem with knowing which order the channels are in when it's multiplexed, which is the same as the problem with the analog tapes. And that's where this whole sequence of 1,000 odd nuclear explosion records, over 1,000 nuclear explosion records, having analyzed in detail, gives us confidence that we know which order the channels are in and what the metadata are. So I should finish there. There are a few other comments on quality control which I can make, but I should probably hand back. Thanks.
I see Lars raised his hand.
All right, Lars, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Ron. So, well, I just want to pick up one point just David said. So when we, to my best recollection, it was also a question about the quality of the digitized data. So of course, at the very beginning, so we have in our archives only 12-bit data with gain ranging. Of course, they do not cannot compare in dynamic with today's 24 bits. But nevertheless, so it has constantly been increased. And what we can say for our data, our Grafenberg data, which goes back to 1976, of course, they are all in a modern archive. So there are mirrored at different places, at different sites, and for everybody there is exists the opportunity to access these data via an FDSN web service. So so we tried to get rid of this problem with the tapes many years before. So fortunately, we are in that position that we have our data safe. And with respect to the other data, so of course in Germany, so we have a long history in seismology going back to the beginning of the 20th century, and we have this lots of carbon black recordings, and there is a national initiative founded by the German Science Foundation also to digitize these data. And of course, among these, we can be sure that there are a lot of also explosions from the past. And this is a project which is still in the planning, but once it will be turned out to be successful and funded, I guess in a couple of years we will be able also to provide historic data from old seismograph stations in Germany. Thanks.
Thank you, Lars.
I'm ready to pose the next question from the audience to the panel. And this is two questions combined. They're very similar. One is there any effort in generalizing and centralizing the digitalization of historic data, like having a common file format for the metadata and the data themselves, a central place where to store the digitized data? And there's another question that kind of follows on this is, can IDC, CTBTO, consider to support and coordinate digitization program and projects for historical seismograms related to nuclear tests worldwide? And I know that Ina already mentioned in your presentation, and you said NDC in the box could include digitization software. You also suggested VDEC, the Virtual Data Exploitation Center that the IDC offers for sharing data. But what do the panelists, the experts, think about these questions and the idea of the CTBTO to taking a role in this?
Before we get to the question of which agency or institute will be the best one to host the data issue, let me address an earlier one Martin read. In other words, whether there should be some centralized methodology or procedure in digitization effort. As a program manager, what I have learned from the actual performance in this area is that, well, we do have one project currently being pursued by Harvard University that has developed some software, made it available to many universities and institutions, and they are happy about that. But then another team found that, well, yes and no. When we apply that algorithm, that application software to the Soviet era waveforms, working with Kazakh colleagues, they found that, well, not quite applicable. So at this point, personally, I kind of feeling, well, maybe hoping to have a one standardized application software may be a little bit premature. We might still need to see a little bit more, seeing the work from several different teams to see if indeed that would be the case, or maybe there will be some situation where you need some specific software to handle some special situation. That's my observation, the lesson learned from my performance. But I'd like to hear from other panelists what they think. All right, David, go ahead.
Yeah, if there's, I think, yeah, I think that lesson is important, and I think what's at the heart of that is the quality assurance and quality control of both the waveform data, the timing, and the metadata. So the location of the channels, the order of the channels. So I think our plan, our sort of QA is kind of in 3 stages. So the first thing is once the file is digitized, you expect it to be a certain length, and that's the first look. And then the second look is we have a viewer software that's been developed so that you can see whether the data looks like seismic data, and whether you can read the time code. Because if you can't read the time code, then you can't do the data's very difficult to use. And the third stage is in each, the time window for each tape, we actually analyze an earthquake or an explosion signal and beam it up, and analyze it to check the beam, the channel order, the onset times. And I think once we've been through all of this QA, then that information is going into a database and the data will be served. Now, the policy is to make everything available. The practice is it's always resource limited, but our intention is to get there and make the data available. And at the moment, we would be distributing in sort of standard, like the GSE2 format or IMS2 format, and others. But as you probably correctly point out, sometimes users want all the information, and other times they just want the raw data, the waveform data. So it's a complicated business, but I think there are massive benefits to making anything we've digitized available, and that is that the wider the user base, the better that it's free quality assurance, basically. So the better it is, and the more institutions who use these data, then the easier it is to argue for the resources to keep these data preserved, so that we don't throw the tape, we don't throw the data on the floor. Thanks.
And Martin, I have a question for you. I think there will be a session later, could be a poster session on the data rescue issue. Is that correct?
There is
probably under 2.5. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a poster session and there's an oral session. The oral session is today at 5:30 to 6:30, and the poster session, I don't know by heart, but it should also be today. Probably it's already over. I'm not sure. Sorry. I saw for a moment, Lars, you made like this. Did you want to say something?
Yes, thanks, Martin. And if I may, so when this question pop up, where to store the data? So I think it's an interesting point on the one hand. On the other, I think it's a non-issue. So of course, so I'm a little bit biased, looking with a European perspective. So we have this what is called IDAR, European Integrated Data Archive. So you just have a front end, a web service where you just ask for specific data, and you don't care where the data is stored. It's more like a little bit like a cloud solution. So and the data could be stored at any place of any partner. And you don't have to care about this. And when you take this example as a prototype approach for where to store the data, I think it's this question might be of minor importance, because the only importance is just where you have the entry point. And if you have a well-defined entry point, and you at the second stage, you do not care where the data is stored, as long as it is secure for a long time, and this you have something like a backup, and to my understanding, I think it's of course it would be also interesting if the PTS would provide some assistance. Well, I think we also have some vehicles like EU joint action. Maybe we can think about things like that in the future, also to help specific NDCs in digitizing their data, and I think this is something which we should keep in mind, to my understanding, and discuss in near future. So how to proceed. So once, of course, what we have learned before, when these technical issues are more or less solved, and we have the quality assurance, we have a good idea how to proceed, and we have some avenues to follow. To my understanding, that would be a good approach. Or I think that's it from my side. Thanks.
Thank you, Lars. Go ahead.
If no one else from the panel wants to respond to the last two questions that I read out, I could ask the last two questions from the audience, because we are closing into the end of this panel. And before I do that, Christos was so kind to give me the information that I can pass on now to you. The poster session is tomorrow from 9 to 10 Central European time. Unfortunately for North America, not easy. The oral session today, as I said, Central European time, 5:30 p.m. And the two questions that I want to read out now are, again, technical questions. So there was not a single question asking about the usefulness of historical data. So that's obviously not a question to anyone. It's clear. So two other technical questions. One is, have folks investigated how to establish the calibration of the old analog instruments that develop the analog records, so you can make corrections? And another remark or comment that you may also want to respond to is, the most important lesson is to re-archive the data every time the archiving technology is changing. So please, who wants to respond?
Yeah, the first part I can cover a little bit between State Department and also Department of Energy. We jointly funded Michigan State University to help some institutions in Asia regarding the calibration of the old analog instrument. And I believe there are talks and as well as posters to be presented by Michigan State University and their partners on that issue. Yeah, so that's the first part. Thank you.
I see Lars and
Lars,
and
yeah.
David. First, Lars.
Okay, so let me just briefly elaborate a little bit on the second point. Of course, where we re-archive the data continuously. This is what we have. I think this is the quintessence of what we heard before. So of course, in the past, so the data were stored on tapes or on CDs and on DVDs, and now they're all on hard disk devices, and maybe in near future, so there are on something else. I don't know. So maybe on crystals or whatever. So of course, so we are marching with the technology, and also to ensure that this wealth of data, so where we spend so much effort, money, and time, and which is an important information for us, so to keep this more available. Of course, we follow the current passes in technology, and I think it's not to me it's something which is, of course, something we are doing all the time. So in re-archiving the data to keep them being available. Thanks,
David. And Paul after that.
Okay, so no, thank you. It's a very good point. I agree. And just on the usefulness, you said it wasn't really discussed. Just a word of warning that the historic underground nuclear test data are from explosions that were tested when there wasn't a test ban. And so it may not be the same population of explosions as you're trying to prohibit under a ban. So, for example, it's expensive to drill the hole, so you're only going to drill the hole deep enough for containment, as Lars mentioned, from the overburden pressure. So just a word of caution. The way forward is to understand the physical basis of how underground explosions generate seismic waves and infrasound and hydroacoustic waves. And that's a large segment of this conference is dedicated to exactly that, and I'm looking forward to following it. Thanks.
Oh, go ahead.
So on the question of knowing with confidence the response of an old instrument, there are quite a number of scientific papers that have pursued that subject. I'm most familiar with the work of my colleagues, Kim Won-young and Göran Ekström at Columbia University, in working for more than 30 years in Central Asia. They have found it very useful in conjunction with the Moment Centroid project to find seismic events recorded by those instruments for which there is confidence that the focal mechanism is well known, and from detailed knowledge of particular seismic sources, the recorded pulse shape, can it be used to infer a modern description in terms of the poles and zeros and the overall gain of an instrument for which the response is given perhaps by a curve on a piece of old graph paper? Well, it's a matter of practical experience. And papers published in Transactions of the AGU when we first began to work with the Borovoy data, and very successfully. I'm so glad to hear the contributions here from Nina Sokolova and her colleagues in Kazakhstan, where we worked for more than 25 years where they did most of the work of saving records with a focus on explosions, but also for some earthquakes. And over time, one builds confidence that the recorded pulse shape is completely understandable because these are events also recorded by instruments with a known response, and the overall process allows building confidence that we know the response of a new instrument. On the question of a distribution system and whether there might be a role here for the IDC, I would say, of course, that might be an aspiration, but the practical experience is that we have a range of attitudes among the member states on the question of basic information about nuclear testing for those nuclear states and a smaller number of states outside the Non-Proliferation Treaty that have conducted nuclear tests. So a role for the IDC is not plausible in any blanket sense, but it is certainly an appropriate aspiration.
Thank you very much. And since we now have 1 p.m. in Central European time, the time of this panel has ended. And I think every panelist, you experts for your participation. I thank the audience for participating and for active raising questions. Christos for assisting with the questions, and the whole team here for supporting this session. I think it went very well. So thank you very much. See you later at another session.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you.